right, welcome to the Ellis Talker Show. I'm DV LeBron. Today, my on-site episode with the great Michael Scott, the Waxahachie City Manager. How you doing, sir?
DV, great to see you.
I always want to talk to you budget time and then after the budget, just to inform the people of Waxahachie so they could find out what was passed in the budget, how it met the needs, how some of the things are to be continued. And I love that doing it with you because this is a non-political side of it. And he does the numbers. He does numbers. He runs the departments. And so what's going on, he's got to do it on a day-to-day basis. So it's good to get that kind of information. So thanks again for coming on the show.
Absolutely.
So this year, what did that budget look like? What were the priorities?
Yeah, I guess we've been doing this for, 3-4 years now, I think.
We have,
and so we have been through it a few times. Like I usually start out with is what drives the numbers are the priorities of council. And this year, not unlike any of the other years, really we'll have the priorities early on. And really to city council's credit, those priorities really have not changed. And so consequently, we were able to continue a lot of the good things we're already doing and just maintain some trajectory that we're on. Those priorities, again, are public safety is always right at the top of the list. We're blessed with old streets through along our old buildings, which comes along with the old infrastructure. So we always have that to repair. City staff and just maintaining a good quality staff to serve our citizens has been a priority of council. And of course, amenities and just those things that make quality of life in Waxahachie special is a priority as well. So with those priorities as a backdrop, council looks at our numbers and we walk through our budget cycle. And gosh, this starts, I was talking to the finance director just the other day, and we started back in February. So it seems like as soon as you adopt a budget one year, you're already starting to talk about the next year. So not a whole lot of time to rest on your laurels. You got to jump right back in and start talking about the next year. Really all year long, we've been talking about it. And just last night, we had our public hearings for both our tax rate and our budget. So it looks like we're pretty well locked in as far as what council wants to do this year. That'll be officially adopted next week is the plan per our timeline. But yeah, in that budget, we've got, as always, we've got a number of streets that we're going to be doing. Public safety, as I mentioned, is our priority. We had to order, get this, because of the timing of ordering fire trucks, which is more like 4 years to build these things. You've got to plan ahead. So you're planning obsolescence for a fire engine 4 years in advance. So we had to order 2 fire engines this year, not going to take delivery for another 4 years. So those are in the budget this year.
Wow.
Public safety also included a firing range for our police department, and then as well as personnel for both police and fire. So we added 6 firefighters on the fire side and 5 officers on the police side. And then also another animal control officer. We consider animal control part of public safety. So really you've got 12 and actually 14 positions. There are 2 civilian positions in there as well.
What type of positions for fire and what type of positions for
Police.
the police department?
Yeah. So we approve positions at entry level because we're a civil service city, which is fantastic for our staff. So what it does is we approve positions at the entry level position. We authorize those positions. And then what it does is it offers opportunity for promotions from our folks that are already within the city. So on the fire side, we have 6 firefighter positions. And then what they'll do is that will allow for us to bring those positions on and allow for promotional opportunities in the future. On PD, we bring them in as police, as officers. Actually, cadets usually is where they start out, and then we move up. We also do offer an opportunity for what they call lateral transfers. So if you're a firefighter, for instance, in another city that maybe has 3 years experience, you could actually reduce 1 year and come in as a second-year firefighter. And so which is nice because then we're not sending them to fire school and they're maybe already a paramedic or what have you. And so we're able to let those folks hit the ground running. So there's kind of a win there if we can get folks that are lateral transfers.
One of the things that I heard was a concern was this ambulance service that we switched to. Can you talk to me about what's going on as far as budget with that? I heard that maybe the city was talking about, and I know that might be a political decision, but you probably have to sum up the numbers. What does it look like if we wanted to have our own ambulance service in the city of Waxahachie?
Yeah, we've run the numbers just for comparison's sake. And I'll say the contract, not only that we were in most recently, but also our current contract is much more advantageous from a financial standpoint. And so if you can have the private sector provide that service effectively and at a level that you're satisfied with, that's by far the better route to go. It'd be very expensive to bring it in-house. And by the time you pay for not only just the ambulances to outfit those, but also the staffing required, because it's a 24-hour service. And then you figure out how, based on your size of geographic area, number of runs and everything, how many ambulances you need to be operating. It can get very expensive, millions of dollars, where we're not near that in the way of our subsidy for private sector to provide. So right now, Allegiance Ambulance Services is our provider. They are for not only City of Waxahachie, but City of Ennis, Red Oak, and Ellis County. The four of us are partners in this. And as we collectively contract with Allegiance right now.
So they've had some growing pains a little bit.
Sure.
Are those things that are being addressed? Is that a council level, or is that a city level? Kind of the things that are being
Yeah.
addressed?
So day to day, we work directly with Allegiance to make sure we're getting the services that we're contracting for. Like with any new contractor, when they come on, you're working through some kinks and so forth. And so as of January, Allegiance took over that service. We've worked closely with them to work through and troubleshoot some areas. And I'll say this, that at least from City of Waxahachie, and I think that our partners can say the same thing, that those response times and those numbers are looking much better than they did at the very beginning. Which, again, you have growing pains. It wasn't a surprise that we had to work through some of those things.
It's starting to tighten up.
It is.
Okay. Okay. Since I'm going to stay on staffing, since
Sure.
that's where we're at. What did the city staffing look like for different departments, as far as not the law enforcement, but in the general side? What are some of the things that you had to look at? Pay raises for the staff of the city. What happened on this budget with that?
Yeah. So, well, I'll start with the pay raise question. Last year, as I mentioned, one of the priorities was keeping our good staffing and being attractive and marketable for new folks to come on. So council made a big decision last year, and we leaned very heavily on our salary. We did a salary survey, compensation study, and council went all in on that. And so that was the big ticket item in last year's budget. With salaries, it's a gift that keeps on giving, because it's not just a 1 year spend, it's a continual spend. So that's been built into our budget again this year, those raises, but there's no additional raises in the way of like compensation study. We do have what's called a cost of living adjustment, which is pretty customary, just to make sure that our compensation levels stay marketable. And so that was included in our budget this year. In the way of staffing, though, outside of the civil service positions, I mentioned the cemetery, but that's an area where we get a lot
Cemetery.
We get a lot of questions about. Yeah, we, of course, the City of Waxahachie operates our
That
city
one right
cemetery,
here?
the one down on Hawkins Street.
Okay.
And grass seems to grow very fast sometimes a year. And we usually hear about it when it's growing faster than what we can keep up with. And council realized that and recognized that we want to maintain that facility at a high level. And so we did add additional staffing in the way of the cemetery. So that hopefully will help us stay ahead of some of the grass during the growing seasons and so forth. But then also we have 2 individuals in our streets department. We have, of course, like I said, we're maintaining old streets. And so we're doing a lot of more work in-house. And so we've got some personnel for that. We operate 2 water plants as well as a wastewater plant. So we have some additional staffing to maintain those facilities and operate those facilities, because that's a growing demand continually as we grow as a community. Those facilities continue to have more demanded of them. And so we had to add a little bit of staffing there. Planning department is stretched. This year we began regulating short-term rentals, which has very much been a hot topic.
Yes, it has.
Yeah. And
what does that look like for the city? Like for you, when the council says, hey, we want these regulations for short-term rental, what does that look like to you? What happens at that point?
Yeah. So we had to put in place really regulation. We adopt an ordinance as far as how we're going to regulate what requirements we're going to require of these short-term rentals to continue to operate. We actually went through a period where we had a moratorium where we get our legs underneath us as far as putting those processes in place and those policies in place. And then since then, we've required short-term rentals that want to operate in Waxahachie to go through a registration process. At registration, they have an inspection, like a building inspection that has, whether it be cameras and locks on doors and all the requirements that are part of a short-term rental to be safe. They to meet those requirements, we inspect it, we permit them, and they can continue operating. So it's a little bit more regulation. And also in Waxahachie, from a zoning standpoint, we require them to get a specific use permit. And so what that means is every one of the short-term rentals has had to go back to city council to basically get approved to operate. So you get through the short-term, the specific use permit process with council, then you register with the staff and get your inspection done, and then you're awesome. So it's a burden, right? So the onus has been on us to spend a lot more resources. And that's why I say the planning department was getting stretched for that. So they've been given another resource, another planning position to help them with that.
Fantastic. Those are things that growing cities, they tend to need. There's a lot going on in Waxahachie. Let's look at those roads, because I talk to you every year about the roads. And because I was so stunned by that first number you gave me of the actual repairs for roads that you need. So talk to me about this year's budget for roads,
Mhm.
and then give me that number again of what it's looking like you need.
Yeah. So I think the number that you're probably referring to is when we talked about it being $60 million worth of road repairs.
That
Okay. And so what's funny is you'd think that because of the money that we've been spending every year, that number would be going down. But what happens is as soon as we pull one of those projects off that list because we've completed it, there's another one replacing it. We still, and of course, the cost of construction continues to go up. So we're probably 80 some million dollars worth of roads that could be repaired in one way, shape, or form today. Again, we're just biting it off, bite at a time and trying to make our way through it. The Bellevue edition, which is one of our a real nice, a little bit older neighborhood, really was in need of new roads. It's about 3 years ago, we began systematically working through that neighborhood. This year, we'll replace 2 more streets, and then we've already budgeted for engineering for the next street, which will actually be the last street. So we'll finally get done with the Bellevue edition. But I know those neighbors there and those residents there will appreciate us not being there, and they'll appreciate the roads that we leave behind, because they really, the roads and the streets and sidewalks, street lights, curb and gutter, the whole deal that's been installed in those those streets that are complete, the neighbors seem to be very happy. And
and
so,
that's blacktop.
no,
Did you
actually,
do that
we
scarification?
do a little bit of both. The scarification allows it is when we do our repairs.
Mhm.
But then a lot of times what we'll do is on the complete replacements, like we did in Bellevue, would be a concrete street.
Okay.
Yeah, it really depending on the neighborhood. Sometimes it's more appropriate to use asphalt versus a concrete street, but a lot of times we do asphalt, we'll still do a concrete curb and gutter. Yeah, it just varies on the neighborhood.
Was there any big projects for roads that was in this budget for that was planned for the next one, as far as that you got approval for a big project?
Yeah, well, Pensacola, the last street in Bellevue,
Mhm.
it's a pretty long street, and so that would be the final one, which is a pretty expensive street. But I will mention in the way of roadway infrastructure, probably the largest street project that we will have taken on ever that I can recall, we got approval for this year. It's actually in our bonds that we issued this summer. And that is a new road to serve where the new high school, a new conference of high schools going in south of town.
Oh,
So we had to
right.
partner with the school district and say, okay, where are you going to look at this school? That we had to reprioritize not only some street money, but also water and sewer money to make sure we had adequate infrastructure there to
Mhm.
serve that school when they want to open in 2027. So in this year's summer bonds that we issued, we had about $9 million worth of roadway dollars just for that road. And actually the viewers who are listening, if they want to chime in on maybe a name for this road, we would love to hear it, because have yet to determine what the name of this new road is, but essentially it parallels Old Italy Road that heads out towards the lake between 77 and Old Italy Road. It'd be a new
DV
road.
Way would be good. I
I
think
like
DV
that.
Way.
As a ring to it. Yeah, I like that. So
No.
yeah, so we'll put that road in, and again, the plan is to have that ready to go and open up along with the new high school.
Wow, I'm sure that the residents will be happy to hear that. That road all those roads that go around Global, is that all state roads, all that stuff that goes around Global?
Around the
The Global High School. There's always talk online
Yeah.
about the mess that is the traffic and going in there and stuff. Is that all state roads around there? I'm not too sure.
Okay, so Global's moved so many different times. There's
Sorry.
no, sorry, where it's at on the Hancock building right
I
now.
believe so.
So you've got Brown Street, which is FM
Mm-hmm.
813 on to the east. You got Highway 77, which is to the west.
Mm-hmm.
Then you've got a city street that goes right in front of it that divides there and what's Coleman
Mhm.
now. So that's the one that the city is in control of. But then the state has jurisdiction over both 813 and Highway 77.
Oh, wow.
And really, and that's funny because it cuts both ways, because there are a lot of FM farm to market roads in and out of Waxahachie.
Mhm.
You can just go down the list, right? You got 387, 287, 66, 813, 878, 879. I mean, on and on, 1446. There's all these roads, and those are all state jurisdiction.
Mhm.
And so while we can help influence improvements on those roads, we don't make the final decision. And so a lot of times we partner with our friends at TxDOT, and we've got a great working relationship with them. But at the end of the day, it's going to be their decision whether there's money there or whether there's the appetite for certain improvements or what have you. So if it's a turn lane, if it's a traffic light, if it's whatever, we'd have to go through them to get authorization.
How often do you get that call? Hey, the 77 is just horrendous, and you're like, it's a state
Daily.
road daily.
It's a daily call. Yeah. And it's not always 77, right? There's always something. It's always, these lights are messed up. Like maybe
Mhm.
the timings are off, or we
Mhm.
really need a turn lane here, or can we get a stop sign here, or whatever it might be. It really, between my office and our public works and engineering offices, I think it's safe to say daily we would get some sort of call, if not a complaint, maybe even just a comment or a concern.
Okay.
Hmm.
I mean, the roads are something that are always continuous, but I find it fascinating, the amount of money that's involved in having to do that. Now, have you had with this year's budget, did you have to put in a major repair? Like you were telling me that a lot of the pipes in this area, beautiful area, our downtown area, the square, etc., but everything is really old. You were telling me that you were having to do a lot of, you would dig up and, oh my God, these pipes need to be changed.
Yep.
Has anything big like that gone into this budget?
We put maintenance money into every budget. And so we're always looking at areas where maybe there's a water quality issue. Maybe there's some redness to the pipes where maybe there's been some rust or it's an old pipe or whatever. They might have some discoloration in the pipes or in the water. And we'll go in and try to proactively address those. And so we put money in the budget to find those and address those problem areas. In this budget, really, I would say I would characterize it more of a capacity budget where we're trying to add capacity both in the water side and the wastewater side, particularly where our growth areas are. To the northeast, we've continued to systematically add to our trunk sewer lines along Grove Creek, which really opens up additional housing unit opportunities and development, I should say, in that corridor of that sector of the community. A lot of our sewer comes down to a lift station at Jefferson Street, and we've had to make pretty sizable improvements to that lift station to be able to lift it to the plant. And so those are kind of those capacity things that we've had to do. One thing in the budget this year that we're looking at doing, in fact, we've got a contract ready to go on, and that is dividing our pressure planes. So we have 2 water plants, like I mentioned. Essentially, they serve different parts of the community. And the thought is you can actually operate it much more efficiently if you can divide those 2 pressure planes, or you run like a northern plane and a southern plane. And then, of course, if you ever had a water issue,
You don't lose the whole,
you don't lose the
you
whole thing, but
know,
then you can bleed over, right?
right,
We can say, okay, we're gonna cut off our water source on the southern plant and
right.
use bleed over from the northern plant if there was in the case of,
Yeah.
of a situation. And I'll tell you, we are blessed. And I think I mentioned this on your show before. We're blessed by having multiple water sources, and so
Mhm.
really, my predecessors and folks that have come before us here at the city did a wonderful job of kind of teeing up our community in the way of water. Really had great foresight as far as getting us in a good position. I mean, we have surface water, we've got groundwater, we've got partnerships and relationships and water rights in different places that really gives us a lot of options in the instance of some sort of outbreak of a bloom or some sort of environmental issue or something
Mhm.
like that. We can adjust and deal with that.
We've talked in the past about the wastewater plant
Mhm.
and the water in general and that infrastructure when it comes to water or wastewater. You told me that you had to add some things. There were some things that were going to have to come online. Was that kind of stuff addressed in the budget as far as the plants are concerned? What does that look like? And water treatment, is that all going right now?
It is going well. We continue to monitor that very closely. And probably what you might be thinking about is I think we closely look at because we have one sewer plant
Mm-hmm.
and we are regulated by Texas TCEQ, Texas
Mm-hmm.
Commission on Environmental Quality. And their standard is once you hit 70% capacity, you need to start engineering that expansion.
Yeah.
And by the time you hit, I think it's 85 or 90%, you got to be under construction. Okay. So those are like some numbers we continue to watch on how much of our plant capacity is used up.
Where we at?
Good news. We're about 55.
Okay.
Now, with that said, it changed. Like when we have a huge rain event,
Mhm.
we have a lot of infiltration into the plant. And so guess what? That capacity gets
Right.
pushed. But so the way we've addressed it, and this council, as well as councils before, have really worked at this faithfully. And that is shoring up our pipes. So in other words, we have a lot of those repair dollars in our budget to where you minimize the amount of infiltration. And so where we've got some old pipes, let's close up those pipes where we're not taking on more water, because then that's adding virtual addition of capacity
Mm-hmm.
at the plant, because you're no longer taking on that rainwater.
It's artificial. It's
It
just,
is.
okay.
Mhm. Yeah. While
Again.
we're not actually adding additional capacity per se at the plant, we're not taking as much during those rain
Right.
events.
So it's good that we're growing, but knowing that we have a little bit of time for you guys to plan on adding and going forward with that,
Mhm.
because I know that's going to be a beast.
And like residents around here, we get questioned, why are y'all smoke testing? They hear smoke testing. That's exactly what we're looking for. So we're looking for where the smoke comes out to where we know we've got a vulnerability and we can shore that up. So that's what that test is. We've been doing it every summer for actually the last 10 years or so.
That stuff is all very technical. You'd be surprised how technical when you get into wastewater is. It's a whole
Yep.
it's a whole animal in itself. Now, when it came to as far as the amount of what was our revenue like this year? What is our debt like this year? Let's talk about those numbers.
Sure. You really can't talk about revenue without talking about the tax rate.
Yeah, we're going to talk.
Yeah. So we did keep our tax rate flat this year. So we're still 61 cents. The ad valorem values were still strong. I think, I'm trying to remember exactly the numbers, DV, but we had about $500 million worth of new valuation added to the tax rules. And I think about 168 million of that was new value. So basically you take that same rate times the additional value, and that's obviously, it helps your revenue numbers. This year, our total revenues, not just ad valorem, but also sales tax and everything else, we're about $68 million in the general fund. So a pretty healthy operation. And that's up a couple $1 million over the last year. And a lot of that, you look at inflation. Inflation was 3.3% this past year. And a lot of that is just covering additional costs of doing business. And so it's not like that's all just gravy to spend on new things. It's like a lot of it is continue to be able to pay for the things that you are already doing.
Now tell me though, because that one that is brought up, and there's people who talk about no new revenue. And I know that's the political side,
right?
But there's different things that are talked about when it comes to property taxes. People are hurting, and it can be a very polarizing argument thing on taxes. But your revenue, as far as your expenditures, what you're spending on. Can you talk about some of the biggest hits you took in last year that inflation really hit you? You're like, okay, guys, we had to pay $4 million more. Did you have that kind of stuff happen throughout the year?
We did. A lot of that was where it hit us hard was in some of our construction costs, because some of the big projects we're talking about here, whether it be infrastructure or we finished this baby building last year, we finished the Fire Station 4, some of those capital construction costs, you bid them 1 year and you don't complete them for 2 years. There's some inflation that happens during that time where things cost more and you're having to make up that difference. So some of those projects, as well as when you budget for a project, you even get an engineer's estimate. By the time you go to bid, you get your easements, you go to bid, you're another 18 months possibly before that project hits, before you're ready to pull the trigger on that project. And those costs have escalated. So yes, as construction costs go up, it directly affects us. And so we've had to go back to council multiple times, which more than I'd like to, but again, it's the inflationary environment we're in, to have to go back and say, you know what, I know we programmed that, but maybe we issued bonds, let's say, last year for this project, but now by the time we're ready to bid it and we're ready to sign the contract, it's gone up by X%. And so we've got to go back to council. And that's one of the luxuries we've had in the way of having a healthy fund balance, that we've been able to say, you know what, that's still a priority project. It's still a project that we need to move forward with. I know it costs more, everything costs more. And so we've got the dollars in our fund balance to be able to continue on with that project. And so it's been a nice, I don't call it a luxury, but at least it gives us that flexibility to where when things do escalate, we can still maintain our operations and not miss a beat. And so
that's what that fund is for too.
It is. And you know what else it's done for us? And people don't realize this when they think, oh, you've got this huge fund balance. And it's really not huge per se. It's healthy, but it helps us with our rating agencies. We're a AA+ rating, bond rating at the city, which is phenomenal. We're very proud of that. In fact, we're probably getting close to being upgraded at the rate we're going. We're doing very well in that sector. But what it does is it helps us issue debt at a more favorable rate. And so actually it saves us money when we go to market to issue bonds. It's good to have a healthy fund balance. That's not the only factor they look at, but it's certainly one of them that helps you on the rating.
How did our debt service look?
Yeah. So we added a little bit to it this year. And again, we're maintaining our 61 cent rate. And so we pushed more to our debt service from our O&M side. Because we actually have 3 sides for our tax rate, because we have from the libraries.
Right.
But most cities have the O&M and the INS. So your interest and sinking fund is basically your debt service. And so we pushed a little bit more to that side, which allowed us to issue debt. This year we issued almost $43 million for the debt without raising taxes, right? So we're able to absorb that and say, hey, we're a growing city. We need to be able to issue debt. We need to construct these projects. And by issuing debt, it helps with that generational equity. So in other words, not everyone today is paying for the road that people for the next 25 years are going to get to enjoy. Everyone pays a piece of that going forward as we issue that debt.
Were you able to get a good rate this time with the interest rates being what they are? Were you able to get a good rate?
We did. I'd love to give you a number, and I'm forgetting what it was.
No, that's fine.
It was a couple months ago. It was much more favorable than what I thought. I want to say somewhere around 4, but you and I couldn't get that, but it was much better than what we thought. So it worked out okay.
So talk to me about the commercial side. How did our commercial revenue look like this year? Did we do better with our sales tax and that kind of stuff?
Sales tax has been our friend. In fact, I look back to the last 5 years.
Mhm.
Okay. And our sales tax has gone up about 50% in the last 5 years. So we went from about 20 million to just over 30 million now. And it's continues to grow healthily. It's allowed us to do some things that we would otherwise be able to do with maintaining our property tax rate where it's at. We've still been able to do things with some park improvements, some quality of life things. And at least in my mind, I always think we're trying to spend sales tax dollars on some of those things. Ad valorem doesn't even cover all of public safety. So
Mhm.
if you think about it that way, I'm trying to think if your viewers can just think of it like, how do you decide what money goes for what? Sales tax and your property tax kind of go in the same pot, the general fund. But if you look at the total output as far as what it's going to pay for, public safety makes up more than what the property tax provides. So sales tax provides supplement for the remainder of that, but
Mhm.
also general government, parks, those sorts of things, economic development, and funds those things. As sales tax has gone up, it's allowed us to continue to invest in our parks and make some improvements there. One of our big projects that we're embarking on right now is the Waxahachie Regional Trail, which kind of heads west towards our
Yeah,
friends to the
I
west.
use that thing. I love that thing.
Yeah, yeah, we're gonna extend it. We're gonna extend it
Mhm.
even further west, and so that's a big project that we're doing, and we're trying to bring on more practice fields. That's something we get a lot of not complaints, but just questions. Where else can our kids play baseball or softball or practice soccer or whatever? And so we're gonna try to bring some additional ball fields online this next year, and so it allows us to do those things. So sales tax has been very healthy.
It's been it, and as far as how we're doing commercially, as far as the business, how's the city doing with business right now? Is everybody just struggling, and you're seeing that as the city manager in your different departments, or are we steady right now?
Yeah. I wouldn't want to homogenize everyone into the same category, but I can say this. We've had a number of businesses that have expanded that have located here that have only just been looking in the past.
Mhm.
For instance, Tom Thumb is getting ready to open. The Express is already open. They're getting ready to open the store here. We've had a second grocery store looking at us for many years, and they finally said, okay, the demographics are right to do it. So that's come along. Golly, we've had I don't know how many coffee shops go and open. If
Yeah,
coffee shops was an indicator of how our economy is
mhm.
going, I think
We are coffee
doing good.
city.
We're doing
Yeah.
good. Hey, which I know you appreciate
Yes,
that.
I enjoy it.
Then, of course, Fanatics, which is, of course, our big distribution center out on the highway. That'll open up. I think it's first quarter of next year. And yeah, there's a lot of growth in there. And actually, there's a lot of interest also in other areas, whether it be the industrial sector, additional retailers, restaurant sector. Things seem to be going pretty strong. And of course, I'd be remiss in not mentioning Baylor Scott and White Hospital. They're getting ready to sink a tremendous amount of money into our community once again, putting up a second bed tower. If you drive by there, there's two cranes up in the air because they've got a second bed tower, another 125 bed tower near the other one that's there. And then also a structured parking garage. Waxahachie has one structured parking garage downtown. This will
Mhm.
be our second one. And I think you can see that's a good indicator of the growth that we're experiencing, that they're experiencing as like more of a regional hospital now. But that helps our growth as we're looked at as a regional hub for retail and restaurants and whether it be healthcare, what have you. That helps us in the way of our sales tax and our growth.
Are there major things that you, and I know that some of that stuff you can't talk about yet, but some of the things that you're working on, some big things that you're working on to get to attract to the city?
Mhm.
And if you could talk about any of those, please break it on my show.
Yeah, no, I'd love to be able to share more. All I can say is a number of our infrastructure projects have been initiated to help promote growth in certain areas. And so, kind of as you look at as we're extending water lines and sewer lines and roadway networks, those are the areas that are likely to open up. And I look forward to be able to announce many exciting projects in days to come. Let's just leave it at that.
No,
Sort of a
I was
teaser.
hoping I'd love to break some on the Ellis
I'm kind of
Talker.
giving you a geographic
Yeah.
areas you can look at. Yeah, beyond that, I think just stay tuned.
Okay, okay. I love having you on this show because I can get these details about things, and there's just so much. Guys, I got to tell you, when it comes to the city budget or even the district budget for the schools, those budgets are monsters. And I go through them and I look, but I'm just a regular old guy. So people like this gentleman right here helps me. Mr. Scott helps me with this, um, because this would be like just an animal to me. Last question I want to ask you, because like I told you, people are struggling with property
Sure.
taxes and stuff. Do you think that you are being a good steward to the people's money and this budget that you gave them this year? And of course they prioritize, but that were you trying to find ways to cut? Are you always finding ways to cut? Have you done that?
I think we have. And in fact, I pride myself on not putting fluff in the budget. As a city manager and by our city charter, I need to deliver to council a balanced budget. And so every year that like we start out, I look at their priorities and say, what can we do within the resources we have? I will say this, and I'm glad you're asking that question because I failed to mention earlier. One of the things the council did this year, they did last year for the first time, but then they sweetened it this year, and that is adding to our homestead exemption. And so those folks, if you think about people who own a lot of rental houses, it doesn't benefit. They're in a business type of arrangement in those homes, but those folks who have homesteads, getting exemptions on those homesteads does directly help the homeowners. And the folks that come to us and say, hey, you're taxing us out of our homes, these are the people that's helped. And so last year we put our toe in the water and did a 1% homestead exemption. This year they sweetened it to 3.5%. And so while maybe they didn't come down on the tax rate, they did try to do something for the homeowners to address that. Additionally, I would just say that we, again, try to use the resource we have as good stewards and not in a wasteful manner. And it's a balance, DV, because you want to be a community that is attractive for young families. And so while there are some things that maybe some would say are frivolous or an indulgence, they actually can have benefits that maybe they're not thinking that make the community attractive for young families that really then in the long run helps those revenues and all. And I'll also just mention that for giving true tax relief to the community, which actually council would love to be able to do. I've talked to each of the 5 collectively and individually. I know that they're sensitive to the tax burden that's placed on our community. We're looking at businesses that can be brought in that really can add to our base to where that can help shoulder some of those costs and some of that burden to where maybe the rate might be able to come down in the future. So that's what we're looking at always.
And that's what I love about Waxahachie. So Waxahachie, a lot of people complain about road on 77 and the traffic and stuff, but you guys there's so much business in this city. So much of that business is putting in revenue, and that does help on the others. It doesn't all go it does spread out that tax burden. And so Waxahachie has grown with that. Now there are growing pains and the 77 is rough, but it's as far as how you've grown with different businesses and you focused on that, on bringing in some good business. And that has helped with that tax burden. I love that you do it because there's other communities that are just rooftops.
Yep.
And the rooftops bear the brunt of everything.
And they're more expensive to serve too. So if you think about it on the expense side, if you have a business, a lot of times those are a lot easier to serve from a city services standpoint. I mentioned earlier about how police, fire, public safety is not even covered by the ad valorem. If that ad valorem goes up, yet we're not having to add police and fire, guess what? Now you get closer to that balance, right? So if you've got a large industry, let's say, that has a very small burden, like they're not calling the police out, you're not having complaints from neighbors, and that sort of thing where you have a police calls, that's a less burden on the city. So they're cheaper for us to serve, but yet they still add a tremendous amount to the tax base. So the more we can add those folks that don't add the burden, but add the revenue.
That's always a good thing. Yeah, that's a good thing.
We're a fan of that.
On my show, the guest always gets the last word. So go ahead. I'll shut up and let you talk to him.
And when I said enough, I appreciate that. I think the one thing I would say in closing is we are transparent the same, right? And that's why I appreciate this program, that we can sit and talk and just be very transparent as far as what's in the budget. I hope that as the viewers maybe have questions or whatever, they will reach out to the city. We offer many opportunities. In fact, we've got a morning brew event with the Chamber of Commerce coming up in October, where the mayor will be speaking and talking a little bit about what's in the budget, some of the projects and all. I encourage viewers to attend that. And certainly come to city council meetings. If there are questions, or reach out to myself or our communications folks, we'd be happy to answer questions. And that's what we're here for. We're here to serve our community, and we take that seriously. We believe in customer service. We believe that we're here to serve you all. And yeah, I just want to remind everyone that that's not lost on us. And we just appreciate getting the opportunity to serve this great community.
Thanks again for coming on the show and for talking to me about this. It was good to actually be able to do it here in this new city hall. It is beautiful. If you guys haven't seen it, come check it out. It is a very nice building. Thanks again for coming on.
Thank you, DV. Yeah. No, I felt like I was just droning on and on.
Okay.
Did we?
39 minutes.
Is that what?